Hi there. Welcome to another edition of Resources Plugged In, the podcast at the intersection of mining and finance. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds, and today we're lucky enough to have Sharyn Alexander, president of Sun Summit Minerals, that trades on the TSX Venture Exchange with the symbol SMN. Hey, Sharyn, how you doing today?
Good, Kira. How are you?
Hey, not too bad. Not too bad. I don't know. Like we're already in the middle of February. We're the year's going by pretty quick. Before
Yeah.
you know it, it'll be time to head to PDAC
Yeah.
for the annual sort of mining conference. Anyways, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. You guys have sort of been on my radar screen. You've announced sort of a new project. We're going to get into all that today. So I thought it'd be an opportune time to kind of meet with you and get the story out there.
Yeah.
Maybe before we kind of dive into all those awesome things that are going on at the company, maybe we could you could give us a little bit of you could get into your background, who you are, a little bit about who you are for those of us that don't know you.
So I am a geologist, so I apologize if sometimes I'm too technical, but I think it's an easy trap to get into when you look at the rocks and you get really excited about mineralization and rock types. So I do have extensive field experience in Canada and as well in Australia. I started out in kimberlite exploration actually in Ontario. I worked up at the Acadie diamond mine. So I was up there one winter. That was pretty amazing, logging core and working underground. From the Northwest Territories, I moved to Australia. I was there for 5 years. I worked underground at a Barrick gold mine. And then I moved to Perth and was more office-based geology, database management, mapping, and things like that. And then I really moved to the corporate side of things. So I rose through the ranks in Sun Summit. I was brought on in 2019 when it was known as San Marco Resources with copper projects in Mexico. And the CEO at the time, Bob Willis, wanted to try a different jurisdiction. So they acquired the Buck project. I came in 2019 as VP Technical Services, and in 2021, I was appointed president. And so now I have that corporate experience as an officer in a public company. So it's really been a whirlwind few years, learning a lot and really being able to have a diverse kind of view on project management coming from the geological, the technical background, and then going into more like investor relations and marketing and building those relationships with shareholders. So it's been really amazing.
So you've kind of been learning a bit about the second business. You've got obviously good core competency on the technical side, the geological side. Now you've been learning quite a bit on sort of the other side of it, which would be the capital market side.
Definitely.
How are you enjoying that?
It's definitely a learning curve, but I have really strong mentors and also supporters in the company. So Tukey Angus was involved. He was co-founder and he was our chairman for many years, and he's a significant industry player. And so I learned a lot from him. Bob Willis, who was the previous CEO and co-founder, he's senior advisor. And so he has been invaluable in providing guidance and advice and kind of strategic direction to the company. And then after Tukey's passing, one of our directors, Brian Locke, has stepped up as executive chairman. And so he really, we work together very closely, and he's very involved in the strategic planning for the company as well as marketing and promotion. So I'm definitely not alone, but it's been really fun and really exciting. And I'm really happy to be kind of turning this corner in my career.
Great. Well, I couldn't have picked, I would say, a more difficult time to sort of learn some of those. It's been a pretty depressed market, difficult market on the capital market side for mining and exploration. So probably an ideal time to kind of, learn. It's a hard time, but it's a great time because it probably will get easier from here. So I guess you've got that sort of going for you. Tough times, but those that thrive and survive are going to do well. So maybe we could kind of turn our attention to kind of what kind of caught my attention originally, which was that you guys were talking about doing a bit of a share consolidation. You'd also sort of announced sort of like a new project that you've optioned or acquired called the JD project. Would you mind just sort of going into a little bit about that?
So the JD project is something that came to our attention last fall when it was up for option. Our technical advisor, Christopher Leslie, had been previously involved, and him and Bob Willis, our previous CEO, they were keeping tabs on it. And when it came up for option, we really felt that it was a great time for us to jump on this. As part of the deal that was negotiated, it's a 6-year option deal. We have the right to earn 100% interest in the project, and that's through making certain cash payments, share payments, and then as well it has exploration expenditure commitments as well. As part of this deal would also be the share consolidation. So this was requested by the property vendors. So we did a 3-to-1 rollback, which just completed last week. And this will really tighten up the share structure, and it can really give us some better leverage for things like positive news and future catalysts. The negotiation of this deal was highly competitive. There were several other groups that were also bidding on this, and we didn't have much wiggle room in terms of, dealing with,
You had to
suggesting
be
different
competitive.
terms.
You had to be
We had to be
competitive.
competitive, exactly. And the deal was actually very similar to the previous deal that they had done with the previous operators. And so, but we really felt that this was, even though it was an aggressive deal, it was the kind of deal we had to do to get this project. And then as well, these projects don't come around very often. We've looked at a lot of different assets. This we really think is the best project available, at least in British Columbia. And it really offers Sun Summit shareholders a chance to aggressively explore and advance a very highly prospective target, which has expansion potential, it has high grade potential, and the combination with the Buck project, which is our flagship, really a balanced portfolio, which will really benefit from some of these catalysts and ongoing news flow and things like that.
Excellent. Maybe you could just kind of dive in just a little bit more detail, if that's okay, and sort of the terms of the acquisition, and then maybe what your cap table kind of looks like post the issuance of, I guess, your initial sort of shares for the acquisition or to get into the option. Would you mind
Yeah.
just giving us a little bit more detail?
Sure. So as mentioned, it's a 6-year option deal. We will earn 100% of the project on after those 6 years. It is a combination of cash payments, share payments, and then the exploration commitments. And so in terms of the exploration commitments, we will be spending this year in 2024, we'll be spending 2.5 million on the project. Next year would be 3 million. I really think those numbers are very doable. I mean, we'd love to spend at least that at the project. That will give us, 8, 10 drill holes. We'd love to drill more than that. So I don't think it's going to be difficult to spend the money. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of immediate drill targets that really catch our attention. In terms of the consolidation, you mentioned like the cap structure. So we're freshly rolled back now. We have a pretty tight share structure. We're down at about 35 shares outstanding, and then fully diluted, we're about 47 million. And then in terms of ownership, we have pretty strong insider ownership. 11% was Tukey Angus is now in his estate, so his family owns those shares. And then as well, the property vendor of the Buck project is about a 12% owner of the company. He really believes in the project at Buck, and he's very happy to buy in the market, and then as well get some shares as part of his option agreement. And so in addition to those insiders, we also have a strong kind of high net worth shareholder base, a lot of loyal shareholders that have been kind of brought on with Tukey and Bob at San Marco days and have kind of stuck around. But then what we're seeing a lot of now, especially with kind of changing of the guard, and then as well with bringing on the JD project, is we're getting a lot of new shareholders as well. Especially those that are coming in at these new levels. And so we're really seeing a diversified shareholder base.
And in terms of the original or the initial option terms, there's some issuance of shares to the vendors of the JD project. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it'll be 2 million shares for each of the years. Yeah.
Okay,
So
great.
they'll become significant shareholders as well through just the earn-in agreement.
Excellent. So you've got a fairly high insider ownership, over 20%, nearly 25%, something like that. Is that correct?
Correct.
And maybe you could walk us through and use some of that technical background. Please don't be too shy on it, because in this day and age, a lot of people that watch this have quite a technical background. But maybe you could just talk a little bit about the JD project, kind of where it's located, what type of geological sort of structure, what type of mineralization it's got, and then what sort of historic drilling. Some of the drill holes that I saw there that were listed in some of the historic that were listed in the news release about this were very impressive. They really jumped off the page. So would you mind giving a bit more of an overview on the geological merits of the project?
So the JD project, it's a substantial land package in the Toodoggone region of BC. So this is kind of an emerging region. There's multiple known targets, but fairly underexplored. And so what this gives us is some near-term value creation and rapid project advancement. There's been significant work already done on the project through historic exploration. And so we really can hit the ground running. There's going to be a lot of exploration upside without much exploration risk. Personally, I don't have any experience in the Toodoggone, but as I mentioned, our technical advisor, Christopher Leslie, has worked there, extensive experience, and he actually drilled on the JD project about 12 years ago with another group, Tower Resources. So the Toodoggone itself, it's north central BC. It's a known copper gold belt. So we're located just north of the Kemess mining camp. So Kemess South was an open pit mine, copper gold mine. The Toodoggone itself has seen a lot less exploration than the Golden Triangle. But it's a very similar geological environment. So a lot of groups are calling it kind of the golden horseshoe. And if you can see in some of the maps that we have on our deck, it's very similar rocks, very similar ages, geochemistry and everything, as well as these known deposits really go across from the Golden Triangle to the Toodoggone area. And so it really is an ideal geological setting for discovery of these high grade copper gold deposits. I mentioned the Kemess mine, so that is currently on care and maintenance. However, there's been kind of a renewal of this camp. There's been a lot of recent activity and development. Infrastructure development is key, and so there is now an all-weather road that goes north of Kemess. Thesis Gold was the group that really started putting some of the bridges back in and maintaining the road. There's been other discoveries in the area. And then, of course, some recent transactions, so the Benchmark and Thesis merger. Just to go over kind of geologically of what we find at GD. So there has been significant exploration, a combination of drilling, surface geochemistry, geophysics, and of course, mapping and sampling. The two deposit types that we're focusing on JD is epithermal gold and silver. So those are more advanced exploration targets and have seen most of the drilling. But then there's also potential for porphyry copper gold. And this is something that Chris, when he was with Tower, they discovered the porphyry potential. So I think at least for the first year, we'll be focusing on kind of the high grade gold that we're seeing at these two zones, so Finn and Creek. And our two news releases we're discussing some of the historic drill holes that were drilled here. The Finn zone itself has seen most of the historic drilling, mostly in the 1980s and 90s. So there's about 280 drill holes at Finn zone.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of
Wow.
this
That's impressive.
was kind of shallow and targeting more of the hanging wall because it is a structurally controlled system. And so that's where we're seeing some of this really high grade that you mentioned. So just for example, 24 meters at 11 gram per ton gold, including 1 meter at 215 gram per ton gold. So we're seeing these more narrow kind of bonanza grades within a broader zone of high grade mineralization, 11 meters at 15 gram per ton gold. But as mentioned, most of the drilling has been in the hanging wall. The footwall wasn't really tested so much. And at Finn, it's really open along strike and along dip. So there's still a lot of exploration and discovery potential here, even though it has seen quite a lot of drilling. In the creek zone, this is what we just had our release about. It's seen very little drilling, so only about 20 drill holes. And here we have, again, some really high-grade gold, 22 meters at 12 gram per ton gold, including 4 meters at 61 gram per ton gold.
Wow.
This was later reanalyzed with metallic screens, and so it returned 4 meters at 103 gram per ton gold. And so what's really key is that these holes from the 80s and 90s have only been selectively sampled, which is key because there's these gaps in really prospective geology. And even just drilling a hole right next to a hole that's been selectively sampled will give us most likely additional grade, just because the gold doesn't stop just because you stopped sampling. You know, for whatever reason, they decided not to sample the whole hole. The last drilling at Creek and Finn was around 97 and 98. So I think it was probably a case of bad timing, you know, right after Bre-X, market conditions were pretty unfavorable. And so actually, I think that company, America's Gold Corp, I hear they turned into like a women's clothing brand or something after that. So they left the industry after that. But along the Finn to Creek corridor, that's where we're seeing this huge potential. It's about 3 kilometers, this really strong gold and silver in the rocks. And soils as well. So one of the soil samples, well, many of the soil samples between Finn and Creek, we were getting 5, 6, 7 gram per ton gold in soils, which for anyone who has looked at soil sampling, normally they're measured in parts per billion. This is really parts per million or grams per ton. So really spectacular surface results in soils, as well in the grab samples for rock samples. 35 gram per ton gold, 18 gram per ton gold, 1,500 gram per ton silver. So these areas between Finn and Creek haven't been drill tested either. And so very underexplored area between Finn and Creek zone. And that's where we think we're going to get a lot of that size and scale potential.
And how far are those apart? Did you say 3.5
Yeah, about
kilometers or so?
just over 3 kilometers. And so we have significant drilling at Finn, mostly shallow in the hanging wall. And then at Creek, we have about 20 drill holes. And then in between, several targets from identified through geochemistry and geophysics, but no drilling. And so at least for the first year, you know, we're thinking we have these drill targets at Finn and Creek that we'd like to follow up on. But then as well, in between this whole corridor, there's quite a lot of upside and discovery potential. And so that's what I think we'll be focused mostly on in the first year.
Excellent. Well, that kind of dovetails a little bit into the question I was going to ask next, which is what would be the sort of planned activities, exploration activities for 2024 for JD, for the JD project. Do you think you'll see some drilling there to sort of, I guess, confirm some of the grades or maybe some of the gaps that you see within the drill database?
Definitely. We can really come out of the gate with some immediate drill targets and move this forward in a short amount of time. We're planning a pretty extensive exploration program, which will include drilling. So at the Finn zone, we've identified some pretty great target areas to target the high grade, also understand some of the structural controls and where these high grade chutes are originating. And then at Creek Zone, systematic drilling there, there's really not a lot of drilling. And so following up with some of this high grade gold, and then as well doing high resolution IP or induced polarization geophysics. That hasn't been done at Creek. It has been done at Finn. Just quickly to go over kind of the porphyry potential, Chris with Tower in 2020 or 2012, they drilled a bit deeper east of Finn, and they actually intersected some really great porphyritic looking rocks, and the hole ended in about 0.5% of copper. And so there's quite a bit of copper potential out there. They later spun that out to Freeport, who came in about 2017 and worked till about 2020, right at the pandemic, before shutting things down. But they ended up doing quite a lot of IP and identified some chargeability anomalies that were really looking favorable for porphyry, systems. And so we'd like to drill deeper at Finn and try to find more evidence for these porphyry rocks. And then, doing data compilation is something that's going to be, we've already started. but we're going to continue to do that. It's really critical for target selection and prioritization. There's quite a lot of data that has not been digitized yet. So it's just in PDFs, in assessment reports, for example, hand-drawn maps. And this is the first real modern attempt in compiling all of the data digitally. And so that's going to take a while to get everything digital. But right off the hop, we have some immediate drill targets for the digital data that we do have. And so, yeah, it's going to be a pretty aggressive summer program at JD.
Excellent. Well, another thing that sort of got you guys on my radar screen is I saw obviously some of the work that Thesis Metals have been doing sort of in the adjacent area to your JD project. Do you believe that your project and Thesis's could be part of a same sort of mineral system? Any comment on that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of work by Thesis, and then of course you heard of the Thesis benchmark merger. The whole
Yes.
area is, hundreds of kilometers of prospective rocks. It's a porphyry epithermal camp, and we own a big chunk of that. And so, just adjacent to us, there's some epithermal gold and silver systems. So Lawyers and Ranch. There's also Shasta and Baker, which is TDG gold. When you look at just the southwest of JD and Finn, we have what's called the Moosehorn target, and that is characterized by epithermal veins, and it has some porphyry potential as well. But the epithermal veins are really similar to the type of veining and mineralization that they're seeing just right across the property border at Ranch. And so we definitely think that there is a whole area play here. This is, the whole area is mineralized. It's kind of the northern extension of the Kemess, copper gold belt, and really an ideal geological setting for these kinds of copper gold deposits.
Excellent. Maybe you could give us a bit of an overview on your Buck project. That's the one that the company has been, focused on for the last little while. Maybe you could kind of give us an overview on what that project's all about, where it's located, the work that you've done to date, maybe some of the results that you've received, and what you're planning to sort of do with that project, and whether it takes a backseat to what's going on at JD or what's going on. Could you give us a bit of an overview?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We have been asked that. Does the option of JD mean that you're stepping away from Buck? And the short answer is no. We knew that JD was an opportunity that really we couldn't pass up, but we're not walking away from Buck. We're not planning to replace it. And we were actually talking about doing a mineral resource estimate on Buck Main before getting the JD. So really, this is also part of kind of our strategic plan is creating some tangible value that's on our existing assets. And so we do have a pending resource estimate at Buck Main. And we think that these ounces in the ground will actually move us from being an early exploration play to something that would attract some potential partners or strategic investments with the mid-tiers and majors. And so at Buck Main itself, it is we made a high grade discovery there in 2020, so 1.5 meters of close to 50 gram per ton gold, and then we followed that up in 2021 with 0.5 meter of close to 250 gram per ton gold. So 2021 was a pretty exciting time for the company. It was the first time that those grades had been intersected on Buck. But when we get down to it, the Buck story is really a disseminated gold, kind of this low to moderate grade, more of a bulk tonnage style mining scenario. We got these broad intercepts of 100, 200 or more meters of 0.5 gram per ton gold, 0.7, or even upwards of 1 gram per ton gold equivalent when you factor in all three metals, gold, silver, and zinc. So our geologic analog for Buck Main is the Blackwater Gold Mine. So that's just to the southeast. So I should mention Buck is in central BC, just south of the town of Houston. So it's fully road accessible. We drive right to the drill rig. Drilling is year round. So the infrastructure is really key in the way that if we were to, put a mine on there, they would have some pretty low mine costs. You have the infrastructure, the power, utilities right there. And so that's how, as well as the size and scale, that's really what allows a kind of bulk tonnage system to be economic. At
Right.
Blackwater, their proven and probable reserves are 8 million ounces at 0.75 gram per ton gold. So not super high grade, but it's that size and scale, and we have very similar size and scale to Blackwater. And they got permitted last year, and they're expecting their first gold pour at the end of this year. So yeah, there's a lot
Yes.
to come from Buck. We think there's great value in the asset, and by putting some tangible value with the MRE, that will really kind of propel us to the next stage.
How much drilling has been done at the Buck project by yourselves, and then how much, I guess, including historic drilling? How many meters? How many holes?
So as Sun Summit, starting in 2020, in total now we've drilled 98 drill holes for just over 35,000 meters. There were quite a bit of historic programs that happened from 1945, 1960s, 1970s. Unfortunately, some of those holes can't be used in the resource estimate for various reasons. We can't verify where they were. We don't have any of the core. We don't know where the collars are. And then as well, we have,
Sure.
instead of individual assays, like in terms of the assay certificates, we just have kind of like a generalization of the whole hole averaged. So we get an indication of what kind of grades were intersected there, but nothing that we could use in a mineral resource estimate. We are lucky that we can use most of the holes from the 1980s onwards. So with our 98 drill holes that Sun Summit has drilled, we can probably add about another 50 drill holes from the historic drilling. And so that's going to help really show the size and scale and fill in some of the gaps in the drilling and would be that would show up in the model. Just in terms of the geological setting at the Buck Main system, it's a hydrothermal environment and it's pretty complex. It's had our geologists scratching their heads a little bit over the years. You can probably tell that from the orientation of the drill holes are all over the place, and that's not just
Hmm.
us, that's also historic drilling. We think there is some kind of structural control on this. So it's kind of a northwest trending structure. We've named the Buck Structural Corridor. That has some kind of control on mineralization. Lithological changes also have some kind of control on mineralization, but there's been multiple phases, phases of fluid emplacement. And so it is confusing, but what we do know is that there is a lot of mineralization. It's near surface, it's continuous, and that's really what you need to see in that kind of bulk tonnage mining scenario.
Right. Good stuff. Well, and you're expecting MRE, your mineral resource estimate, to be out by when?
This quarter, hopefully, yeah.
Excellent. And that'd be a maiden first time it's ever received any sort of resource. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how that goes. Thanks for giving a good overview on that. Anything else you want to touch on before we sort of move on?
Um, yeah, I think with Buck, I mean, it's definitely it's once we do this resource estimate, that's not the end of Buck Main. It's still open in all directions, and so we continue to intersect additional mineralization as we step out. And one of the main areas that we do find potential mineralization is to the north and the northwest. So that's looking like where we'd be focusing some of our future drilling this year, for example. And that could trigger an expansion of the initial MRE. So this is really the initial one. It's not the final. We do plan to expand this resource with continual drilling. And then as well, I just want to quickly mention, we picked up the CR property from Teck last year. And so this is a known copper porphyry, copper molybdenum. There's a bunch of drilling that's been done on that. Many of the holes ended in copper mineralization. And so that's something we'd love to return to as well this year. We did significant field exploration last year. We found a new area of copper mineralization, never drill tested. And then as well, it has some precious metal potential as well. So drilling over towards CR and Mount Maurice to the west of the project, that's something that we'd like to do as well.
Excellent. Sounds like you've got a boatload of work to accomplish on both your Buck project and your JD project, as well as I guess your CR project. So excellent. Thank you for the overview on that. Maybe we could shift a little bit to some of the market dynamics. What's going on with gold and silver. We're looking at gold prices near sort of like sort of like all-time highs, and yet some of the equities aren't aren't really sort of performing. Do you have any sort of like thoughts on it based upon your sort of experience now with getting into the capital market side? What are your thoughts? Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, 2023 was a difficult year for Sun Summit and a lot of other companies. What I am noticing is sentiment is becoming a lot more bullish. There's this kind of cautious optimism, specifically in precious metals going into 2024. And there's really signs out there that the commodity space will really make a U-turn and bring some equity with it. And so as investors are coming back to the space, we really think that companies with strong fundamentals and tangible value drivers will really benefit from improving market conditions. And we plan to be ready for when that happens. So we've really rejigged our strategy. We really want to build that value at Buck Main with the initial MRE. We're going to do aggressive exploration at JD, testing those high priority targets. And we really have that balanced project portfolio. I think that can have catalysts and news flow that can capture the turn in the market, when it does come.
What do you see as being the sort of like overall strategy for the company if we happen to find ourselves in an elevator and you're going to give me a pitch? What's sort of the overall strategy for the company?
So as I mentioned, we've really kind of rejigged our corporate strategy after last year. We know there's value at Buck, but we knew we had to kind of change things up. So really there's three things that we're looking for in terms of our corporate strategy. First is the near-term value creation by rapid project development at JD. So this is, immediate drill targets, highly prospective region, and really significant high grade potential. The next is creating tangible value on some of our existing assets. So that would be the resource estimate at Buck Main. As I mentioned, this will move us beyond kind of an early exploration company into something that could attract a mid-tier major in terms of transactions or strategic investments. And then lastly, the blue sky potential. So expansion and discovery potential, advance some of these grassroots projects to drill ready. And then as well, the resource expansion at Buck Main, continue to drill there. It's open in all directions. And so we think that the combination of this will really allow us to make a change in the market, especially when things turn around. We'll be ready to go.
I'm not sure if you recall, but there was a time, probably during kind of one of the last cycles, maybe 2010, 11, something like that, where you saw juniors starting to get into like, really big bulk tonnage type gold systems that were maybe like half a gram, maybe slightly under 1 gram. They would have very long life of mine. There were assets that really a major would pick up and purchase.
Yeah.
And then if you kind of compare that to, what happened sort of after once, when things got pretty tight again on capital, we had to go through a bit of a hard sort of market. It definitely seems that some companies have turned to more like, sort of smaller type deposit potential that would have higher grades that might result in more flashy sort of drill intercept news releases. I'm starting to see again a little bit of the have and the have-nots, where you've got junior companies that might have a big corporate investor, like a major miner, and again they major mining company, and again their projects are looking like big life of mine, tier 1, tier 2 type projects. And then there's everybody else that sort of is going after, flashy numbers, but maybe not things that would result in takeover or acquisition by majors. Do you have any comments on that? Am I crazy on that, or what are you sort of seeing in the marketplace today?
Well, right now, putting out any kind of news is really difficult. Even those with really spectacular high grade numbers are seeing selling. You know, it's almost like you put out a news release and it's a liquidity event. Um, unless you're Snowline or something with, spectacular
Right.
results. Um, Definitely what we had noticed is those companies with some flashy numbers and high grade, you could put in the headline of a news release would definitely get a lot of market attention. I think it was maybe a tougher sell on a bulk tonnage type system. But Blackwater really was a great analog because they progressed that very rapidly. They got permitted, and that the whole development of the mine went very quickly. And so it was great to have
Sure. And
Blackwater as that.
that's Artemis. Is that correct?
Artemis Gold, yeah, yeah, correct. It was originally Richfield Ventures. Chris
Right.
Leslie was actually part of the discovery team of Blackwater when he was with Richfield. That was then New Gold, and then bought by Artemis Gold. So in terms of kind of seeing the value from putting out these grades, it's almost at a point right now where no one is getting any leverage on anything that they put out. So I don't think that is an accurate description of how valuable the assets are. I think that's more of a sign of times and the current market conditions. In terms of a lot of the mid-tiers and majors, I think they've kind of outsourced their exploration to these junior companies, and we're struggling. A lot of equity is not there. The regular investor pools are kind of drying up. Cost of living is very high. These high risk investments aren't as attractive as maybe they once were. And I think what they're starting to see, these mid tiers and majors, is their reserves are not being replenished. We're seeing the price of gold at record levels, but that's not really trickling down to the junior companies. I'd really like to see more of these mid tiers and majors really stepping up and funding some of the junior companies and exploration, whether that be a strategic investment or having like a 9.9% position, or even in the smaller companies, just funding our exploration. I mean, really, we are the forefront of project generation, and doing all the hard work with permitting and First Nations. And I am seeing a lot of companies stepping up and funding some of the juniors, and so that's something that we are going to focus on and continue to reach out and kind of make our story known, not just to the investor community but also to these companies.
The corporates. Yeah. Corporates are and strategic investors are really key right now.
Yeah.
It's again the have and the have nots. We just had 3 conferences in Vancouver that a bunch of us attended. I'm sure you were there at a few of them. Precious Metals Summit and VRIC, and then Roundup. And I was definitely like those that had a corporate tended to have bigger bank accounts and much more aggressive exploration programs versus those that didn't have a sort of a strategic or corporate investor. They were again having to run on fumes and not able to move projects along as well. But in order to get the corporate sort of interest, they had to kind of start somewhere. Not all of them were formed with corporate shareholders from day one. It was through the hard exploration work that had to be done, and having a relook at a project that maybe 5 or 6 other companies had in the past. So anyways, it sounds like you got some great things sort of going on. I appreciate the ability to sort of chit chat. Maybe you could, we'll switch gears here again. What's a typical day in your life look like at the helm of this thing? What's a typical day look like? Are there any typical days?
I kind of joke with my partner that it's putting out fires and herding cats. There's a lot of it's been pretty busy lately, but it's been great. I work really closely with our executive chairman, Brian Locke, and so I'm always on the phone with him and our the previous CEO, Bob Willis, and then as well working very closely with the technical team, so planning the upcoming field season. But basically, a lot of this is talking to shareholders and forming those relationships. trying to share the story. So there's, phone calls and investor events. Nowadays, things have changed. It's a lot more, social media and YouTube and
Right.
podcasts and stuff like that. So it is easier to share the story. But yeah, we were at VRIC and Roundup, and nothing really beats that one-on-one conversation you can have with your shareholders and really new investors, sharing the story and really getting them on board. So yeah, shareholder relationships is something that I try to focus a lot of my time on.
So your market cap as of today, if I'm not mistaken, is maybe 4.5 million. Is that correct?
Yep.
So there we go. Pretty good entry level opportunity
Yeah.
where you've got a couple of projects. Some of them have been de-risked here through through a bit of drilling. You've got a mineral resource and maiden mineral resource estimate on one that I guess says analogous to sort of a Blackwater style deposit. And then you've got a new project here, which you're going to be advancing along that also comes with it some fairly recent historical high grade drill results. So pretty interesting portfolio of opportunities with a pretty minuscule market cap, which isn't much more valuable than Shell sort of values. So anyways, that's why I thought it'd be a very interesting story to sort of get out there. Appreciate you taking some time. While we sort of wrap up, anything else that you want to sort of touch on? Anything that I kind of missed that you'd like to cover on?
I think 2024 is going to be a really pivotal year for the company. We're really working hard to return shareholder value, solid project planning, and continual news flow. We have the diverse project portfolio, really good value at the moment. As you've mentioned, we're freshly rolled back, great technical team, great jurisdiction, and it'll be a year of catalysts and news flow.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day. I understand that we're going to see each other here in a few days when you're up at Sam's event. So look forward to meeting you in person. And hey, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kier.